My backstory, as succinctly as I can give it to you, is I've always had an interest in marketing and psychology and personal finance. I have been blessed enough to be able to combine those interests into something where I tap dance to work every single day. I was in the marketing world long before I started helping financial advisors. My own businesses, things that I did, projects that I had. Eventually, that turned into a financial advisor in Delaware finding me. It's like, hey, you're really good at this marketing stuff. Could you help me with my marketing and help me get more clients? Absolutely, sure. So at that point, I was James Pollard, just a guy helping people with their marketing. And as my craft, the thing that I have honed and not perfected, but I'm getting closer and closer every day to help him get more clients. That worked well. He started referring other people. He's, hey, you got to check this guy out. And one thing led to another, and I realized I had a business there. So I changed from James Pollard, just the guy, to the advisor coach, the business, because that's kind of what you do. Once you start making money, you're like, okay, this has to be an actual business. And did coaching from 2015 to 2017, like mid 2017, I believe, and got burned out on that because it really, I don't want to say I pigeonholed myself, but what I did was I had stuff that worked. And I'm the type of guy, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. If I have something that I know is going to work, I'm going to plug and play, kind of like a franchise model. McDonald's doesn't want you changing their system. Okay. Chick-fil-A does not want you changing the system. And that's a pro and a con. So it was great for the financial advisors who followed the system, but after a while it gets old. Now, looking back, could I have systematized that? Could I have licensed certain things? Could I have made better business decisions? Sure. But I just wasn't at that point in my life yet. That was actually a very good thing because the advisor coach turned into a media or a publishing company, whatever fancy term you want to call it. Lots of stuff that scales independently of my time, information that financial advisors can consume to help them, whether they hire me or not. And at this point, I think we've got 20 plus products. Financial advisors know me because of the inner circle. They know me for that newsletter. But what's really crazy is there are like 20 other products that it's not just a newsletter. There's the podcast, the Financial Advisor Marketing Podcast, there are articles, there are other pieces of information out for financial advisors. So that is where we are today. That's where it all started. And who knows what it'll be 10 years from now.
It's interesting because I got my start at around the same time. And so I want to say 2015, I just left my former company, decided to hang my shingle out online. And at the time, I decided to focus in on LinkedIn as a system. So I wanted to get really good at something. It was partly imposter syndrome in the sense that I'd taken this course. It was Michael Port's Book Yourself Solid. And so I got that he does.
Yes.
And there was all these coaches, and I was envious of what they were doing at the time compared to what I was doing at the time. And so I decided to take that leap. At the same time, it's who am I to do this? What do I know? And so I decided to go really deep on LinkedIn. And it wasn't until my first financial advisor found me, and this is 2016, and he wanted my help. I started working with them, got great results, and then it led to introductions, referrals, expanding my business to whereas today. And since then, I really only work with financial advisors. And so I think there's a lot of similarities there. Who are some of those early influences for you?
Throughout my career, even before that, Gary Halbert, probably number one. I don't know. They're off to the side here. So these black binders are Gary Halbert's newsletters. Love newsletters, huh? I wonder where that came from. Gary Halbert, for sure. Gary Bensavenga, who is currently the world's greatest living copywriter. If you want to be a fantastic marketer, you need to change your name to Gary. So that's the next step. The next evolution of my career is I'm going to change my name to Gary. I used to listen to a lot of Brian Tracy material and Zig Ziglar material. I realized here's an unfair advantage that financial advisors can give themselves in marketing. Marketing is simply sales applied to, it used to be print, but it can be online, basically anywhere. You're applying sales at scale. So if you know the stuff that works in a one-to-one meeting or a relationship with someone, you can apply that in an online ad, in a seminar, a webinar. Sky is pretty much the limit. So that's actually one of the things that gave me an advantage was that I knew how to sell. So I just applied that in a marketing realm. Typically in the corporate B2B world, the business world, marketing and sales are two distinct departments. But because I was just a guy at the time, I didn't know that and did both of them and grew other people's businesses and my business at the same time, the same way. So those are some of the influences. Jim Rohn, for sure. I would actually move him probably to the number three spot. So Gary, Jim, I still listen to Jim Rohn every single year. In December, I will listen to the Ultimate Jim Rohn Library from Audible. So those are just a few of the people. But Gary Halbert, for sure. The guy was the Michael Jordan of marketing. He had a business so successful and generating so many sales from direct mail that he had to have multiple full-time employees just to cash his checks. Think about that. Just to cash his checks. If he said anything, I'm going to listen to that. I'm not going to listen to the guru online. I'm not going to listen to the guy who says, oh, that won't work. I'm going to listen to the guy that had to have 40 people over time to cash his checks. That's who I'm listening to.
I feel the same way about, for me, it's probably Dan Kennedy. And so I discovered him probably 2017 after Michael Port. And he's probably been my guru of choice in terms of who's really influenced my thinking over the years up until this point.
I love Dan too. I like Dan. I think the reason why I love Dan's material, I actually am subscribed to the Pete the Printer newsletter. There's another newsletter that I pay for and read that he does with Pete the Printer. I think the reason why I don't want to say I didn't get too deep into Dan's material, but I didn't want to emulate it because I know that he still did the speaking circuits at the time and was bouncing around and speaking and doing live events. And I don't want to say trading time for money, but that's really what it was. When you're doing events and you're on stage and you're doing client work, not talking down about Dan Kennedy at all because he is a legend. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. And you can see that in my business today, where I don't do the free calls, I don't do the consultations, I don't do client work, I don't do any of that stuff. Even if you wanted to hire me for client work, you couldn't. It's legitimately not available. So I knew that if I got too deep into Dan Kennedy stuff, that some of that would rub off on me. And I didn't want that to happen at all. So I respect his work. I know he's a legend in the space. I have a ton of his books right here. No BS Time Management is probably the best productivity book I've ever read in my life. But I'm very careful about the information that I let into my subconscious.
What do you do day to day? What does a team do for you?
Right now, at this point in 2026, pretty much the only thing I do is write the newsletter and just hang out and do whatever. So I've been pretty much semi-retired since 2020. When building those products, however, a typical day in my life would be the, Abraham Lincoln has a saying that if he had 6 hours to chop down a tree, he would spend four sharpening the axe. I would say if I have 6 hours to create a product, I would spend four researching the market. I just love spending time with financial advisors. That's all there is to it. I love talking to them. I love hearing from them. I love seeing what they're doing. I love going to their websites. I don't really listen to podcasts, but if somebody has a podcast that they send to me that they want me to listen to, I'll listen to it. I love watching their videos. I love everything that they're doing. I love to see it. I am constantly in the market. So I am truly just a student of the game, watching what they're doing, reading what they're doing, listening to what they're doing. That is where I spent most of my time. And because I was building an audience at the same time of primarily email, but also the podcast, the overtime and LinkedIn and so on and so forth, I started noticing patterns. So let's just say I had a list of 1,000 financial advisors. And if 100 of them asked me about a specific problem, I knew that there was something there. So I would create a product about that problem. For example, financial advisors started asking about LinkedIn. I created a LinkedIn product. They asked about website marketing product. And I started getting very attuned to what was actually something that they wanted help with versus something that they didn't. I started to notice what they would pay for, what they would not pay for, what they would take seriously, what they would not take seriously. As time went on, I started getting more into passion projects. And I guess that's what happens after you don't really need to do certain things anymore. You do stuff that because you want to do it. I created a product called How Successful Financial Advisors Think. Probably the most underrated thing I've ever created. Incredible material. It doesn't sell. It just doesn't because people don't want the how to think stuff. That's what it is. So that's a passion project of mine. They want how to get clients with LinkedIn. They want the client getting website, which is great. And I appreciate that. There's a market for that. But when I put something out that is, I don't do the research, I don't look at the market, I do what I want to do, it flops. And I don't want to say it's never sold because it sells decently well, but it's just not on the level of the other things.
From an advisor's point of view, I see this all the time. I help them write books. I help them build out their authority. The starting point for me is always, it's not about you. It's being clear on who your ideal target client is. In my case, it's your ideal reader. What are the problems and fears that they have? What are the goals and desires they have? What's going on in their head? And we have to meet them where they are and then take them through the journey that shows them that you can help them get what they want. And I just because I've been doing this for at least 10 years or more, it's just so natural to think in those ways. But I see that most advisors and probably most professionals more broadly always start more with a brochure. Hey, we're really good at this. We're really good at this. We're number one at this. And there's this complete disconnect between what they're putting out there and what's going to bring the consumer in. I'd love your thinking on any area of that.
There was a memory supplement that was out on the market, and the company that was selling the memory supplement tried all sorts of different headlines based on typical marketing advice. Start with how to, use parentheses, all of these copywriting rules of thumb. And they would say something like how to increase your memory 300% in 90 days with this secret ingredient. Very classic copywriter stuff that has been quote unquote proven to work. But then they changed the headline to, have you ever walked into a room and forgot why you walked in? And that crushed because it followed the Collier principle. So Robert Collier was another famous marketer from the 1920s, and he is famous for saying, always enter the conversation happening in your prospect's mind. And that's a rule that I try to follow all the time. If business is on the line, like when I help financial advisors, that's where I go. Very recently, I was talking to a financial advisor 2 days ago where he is targeting retirees. If you've been doing this for 10 plus years, actually, helping financial advisors with their marketing, you realize that a lot of financial advisors, I think it's 84% of the advisor market, it serves retirees at some level. The number one problem that they struggle with is retirement income. You can talk about planning, and you can talk about sequence of returns, and you can talk about Social Security, and you can talk about protecting from inflation. But to get them in your universe, the thing that is going to get them to stop is when you say retirement income, getting a paycheck from your nest egg, ensuring you do not run out of money, or at least minimizing the probability that you'll run out of money. That is what gets them to stop. You are being naive as a financial advisor if you try anything else, because that is it. That's what they want. You can choose to do whatever you want in your business. But if you're ignoring what your prospects actually want and desire and their challenges and fears and frustrations, you will pay for it, literally and metaphorically.
Everything that we do, it's always you solve one problem and then you see the next problem and you solve that problem, then you see the next problem and you solve that problem, right? And so I totally agree with the logic there. I guess the question I have for you is that if everyone is competing over the same retirement income, it's the whole blue ocean, red ocean problem, which is how do you stand out, differentiate, and find the right audience for you that resonates with the messaging, but also now you're no longer competing with everybody else.
I think you can view it as a series of dials where you turn the dials, and if you turn enough of those dials, you become the obvious choice. What do I mean by that? One dial might be your experience. It's the all else being equal game, is the way I describe it to my inner circle members. So, all else being equal, the advisor with more experience tends to win. All else being equal, the financial advisor with more credibility tends to win. All else being equal, the financial advisor who has built the most rapport wins. The financial advisor who greatly understands the psychographics, greatly understands the demographics. All of these are individual dials that you can turn, which means if you don't have enough experience, you can make up for it by understanding your market. If you don't have enough credibility, truthfully, I would tell you, you can manufacture credibility. You get the credibility, right? But if you truly don't have it for whatever reason and your life is on the line and you got to do it, you got to get the clients, then you go deep into psychographics and demographics and rapport and all of the other things. All else being equal, the financial advisor who has better copy wins. All else being equal, the advisor who has a better lead magnet wins. So there are all sorts of dials and things that you can turn to tilt the odds in your favor. Is anything a guaranteed slam dunk every single time? No, it never has been, never will be. But again, the all else being equal game, if you just get better in multiple areas with yourself and in your business, then you slowly increase the odds of someone becoming a client. Because marketing boils down to these two things: the number of people who are exposed to your messages and the percentage of people who convert. So again, all else being equal, if you have 1,000 people at a 5% conversion rate, and I have the same 5% conversion rate, but I get in front of 2,000 people, I'm going to have double the business. If you increase your conversion rate and I don't, and we have the same number of people, you're going to win simply because you have increased those metrics. So that's how I like to think about it. There is no one size fits all. There is no secret, nothing like that. It's just getting better at multiple things over time, very slowly, lots of effort. But that's the truth. That's how it's done.
I'll ask you back to the question, which is that what people want to hear, right?
No, no. And that, to be fair, that's a good thing. If you're a financial advisor who actually genuinely wants to be successful, you should be grateful that's a phenomenon because it means that your competitors aren't willing to do the work that you're willing to do. So Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich talked about one of the reasons why people don't get rich is because they're looking for something for nothing. I've seen it in business, in personal life. I've seen it a lot. So these are cues, they're tells that the competitors or other creators or marketers or whatever you want to call them have that desire. So when they have shown their hands that they have this desire of something for nothing, and I
Hmm,
know in my heart that I don't have that, I
hmm,
know I have the upper hand, which is great. So
hmm.
financial advisors should be thankful that other financial advisors don't want the real deal, that they want the quick, easy, bright, shiny object. It's a wonderful thing.
Going back to something that you said about marketing comes down to essentially visibility and conversion.
Correct.
I want to explore that a little bit. And especially when you're a financial advisor and you're asking someone to help them prepare for the next 20, 30 years of their life, secure their retirement income, their legacy, all these good things. Foundationally, it has to come down to trust. To me, the one that I've really landed on and really try to help advisors with is the idea of trust. And the question that fascinates me, and the reason I got into helping them write and publish books, is that how do you take a complete stranger who you can help, who 2 weeks ago didn't know you existed, and get them to the point much more quickly than it typically takes to say, yes, I want you to be my advisor and actually the person that I go to for answers. How do you establish that position of trusted advisor without it taking the months and the years and the decades sometimes that a lot of people tend to do? And so while on one level, I agree it's visibility and conversion, I think what's missing from that conversation is the trust piece because all of these lead funnels and cold outreach methods, et cetera. If you only look at it through the lens of, hey, I just need to send out more, I need to send out more DMs, I need to send out more emails, I need to do all these different things, and I can take my conversion from 5% to 6% or whatever the numbers are, I think it misses, to me, a big piece of the game, which is how do you actually create trust? And if you can figure out how to create trust, in advance of actually talking to someone, I call this pre-sold. The person comes in, you've never talked to them a day in your life, but they suddenly come in, they know enough about you, they're ready to move forward. That's the piece that fascinates me. I'd love to get your thoughts on that piece. How do you advise advisors solve for the trust piece?
Number one is your body of work. I'm a huge fan of that. Financial advisors typically ask me questions like, should I start a YouTube channel or a podcast or this or that? When we get deep into the weeds in those sorts of conversations, we eventually reach a point where I say something like, make sure you get to 100 episodes and be okay, even if you never get a single client from those episodes, simply because having those podcast episodes themselves serves as a credibility mechanism. Because when people view that body of work of 100 episodes about a topic, about a niche market, whatever it is, it immediately communicates that you have put the time in, that you have enough knowledge to fill that space, and those sorts of things. It is incredible what happens when you are able to demonstrate a body of work.
Yeah.
Another example of a body of work could be your clients. Let's say that you're an emerging musician and you're starting to get deals and managers are interested in you and you are looking for a financial advisor because you've heard all these horror stories of musicians getting ripped off. You find a financial advisor and you've never seen a single social media post from this person, no emails, none of the stuff that I would recommend. But this financial advisor comes to you and says, one sentence, some of my clients include Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift, and the late Michael Jackson. That's your financial advisor. I don't care. You are choosing that guy. And you would be right to. So that's another example of a body of work. My second favorite way to build trust is to reveal more about yourself. So disclosure, that's what is called in psychology. So when you disclose things about yourself, you build trust with another person. So when you tell stories about your wife and your children and your dog and how you grew up and what you did and your favorite restaurant, your favorite color, and you like painting, and it doesn't really matter. It's just the act of disclosing creates trust. Here's something that I think financial advisors don't appreciate. In October 2023, I did private research and released it to Inner Circle members about the reasons why prospects don't hire a financial advisor. It could be summed up in one word: intimidation. People are afraid. They are intimidated by the process. They don't know what documents to bring, all this other stuff. If you engage in disclosure, you give your prospects something to talk about in the initial meeting, which is insanely powerful because now you have an icebreaker that you didn't really create. They come to you saying, so I read in your email this morning that you watched the World Cup last night. What'd you think of it? Or do you still have your dog Rex? Whatever it is, you reduce that intimidation. And again, all else being equal, if two financial advisors have the same experience, the same clientele, the same goals, if one engages in disclosure and the other doesn't, that advisor is going to get the clients.
This is actually how this podcast came to be. I'm on LinkedIn, you're on LinkedIn. You do a much better job than I do at this point. And I say that because of the actual engagement that you get on your posts. And what I've observed is that you like to do disclosure. You often do gym pictures, things related to the gym. One of the recent ones you did was you shared something to the fact that you had sent out a direct mail campaign and there was a lot of, I think it was either bald or balding,
Balding, yes.
middle-aged white men who
Yes,
took the time to call and complain. And
correct.
as a bald, middle-aged white man, I jokingly was very offended. And so I made some comment. And then that actually created a genuine exchange. I think that was actually the first time that we had a genuine exchange on LinkedIn. You were on my radar before that, but we'd never really engaged. And because of that disclosure and because of my response to you and then your response back, then I reached out and said, "Hey, I'd love to have you come on the podcast if you're interested." And so I think that's an example that helps to illustrate what you're talking about, which leads me to the next question about the gym. Share with us some of the strategies that
Uh,
you do for yourself and maybe that you recommend to clients when it
I'll
comes
show
to
you.
disclosure.
Let me see if I can put this up. This is a message that I got Thursday, and you can read it. I hope you can read it. Can you see that?
I can see it. It's a little bit blurred, but I got an
Okay.
outline of the message.
Your bench press post drew me in. The bench press drew me in, and then the actual message drew me in further. I'm curious what your coaching program entails. I don't do coaching, but I sent her to the inner circle. Bench press post drew me in. I don't like doing it. I've confessed to you off the air that I'm not the biggest fan of doing it. I don't like setting up the camera. It feels goofy. I feel like I'm some Instagram model. Like it's such a stereotype now that women in the gym are just filming themselves
Right.
constantly. So I don't like it. But my goodness, does it make the cash register ding? And I'm human. Here we are. And it was so strange. So the origin of that story was in February 2025. I turned that room into a gym. That was an unfinished room in my home. And I had a squat rack in there. And I so turned that into a gym and I started documenting the process. I was like, oh, hey, look, I've got this unfinished room here. It's going to be a gym. Yay. I'll keep you updated. Tomorrow I'll post about it. And people really like that. It didn't get here's the thing about these posts. They don't get a lot of engagement, like likes and comments and things, but they get messages. So people
Hmm.
started messaging me. What are you putting in there? What sort of exercises are you going to do? And I thought that was fascinating, but didn't really think too much about it. Then I started sharing the lifts that I was doing. And this is in the beginning. This is where I used to be a lot stronger even than I am now. So I'm embarrassed, truthfully, to put a lot of these lifts online because I know where I was, but I know I get in my head about that. I know at the end of the day, objectively, I'm stronger than a lot of people, but I'm just not where I want to be. I'm not where I was. So that's a huge insecurity for me, but I do it anyway. And I started getting messages like, hey, saw your overhead press video, hundreds of them. Hey, saw your overhead press video. I have been following you for a long time, but now I really want to learn more. Or That squat video was really impressive, or that I love the post about the grip stuff. I would like to learn more. Legitimately happened again and again and again. I thought about it for the longest time. I couldn't explain it. I still really can't explain it. Don't really know. That one I showed you was from a woman, but they're predominantly men. I think what I have concluded is that I think it subtly communicates discipline because you don't get to those sorts of lifts. Not that they're impressive, they're not super impressive lifts, but you just don't wake up and do them. You have to do the work. So I think it communicates discipline. I have also realized, and one of my inner circle members told me this, so all credit goes to him. I don't know if he wants me to mention him, but he knows who he is. He told me that it's a status symbol for men. And gosh darn it, I think he's right. I think anybody can buy the Rolex. Not anybody, but you can buy cars and watches and houses and things, and these are all material objects. And I think that my clientele specifically, they know, I guess what's a good way to explain this? The other status symbols don't really impress them that much. The financial advisor that I work best with, I work with all financial advisors from all walks of life. But truthfully, a financial advisor making $1 million per year has more options, has the ability to spend $50,000 a month on online ads for a couple months to figure something out without really blinking an eye. That's just the truth. That's the way it is. That person doesn't care about a Lamborghini, for example, because he can just get one. He doesn't care. And I think that's why it works. I don't know. I'm just pontificating, but that's the best explanation I've been able to come up with.
So my take on that is that I think the ads that we see with the person and the Ferrari behind them, who they tend to attract is the person broke, for lack of a better word, the person struggling, the aspiring person, the person who hasn't made it because they don't have that option. So they see the fancy car and they're like, oh, I want that. And to your point, like myself, I started lifting weights 3 times a week in August of last year. So it's been about 11 months and I've been very consistent. I've missed only a couple days and I've gone from just an identity of just being essentially a couch potato to now I'm more athletic, I'm a lifter, all these good things. And so I know strength, right? Because I'm testing my strength every day. I'm trying to build it. I know these numbers. I know what it takes. I know the discipline. I know it can't be purchased and all those things. And so I would tend to agree with what both person you mentioned and yourself have said is that if I see specific numbers that you're able to lift, I'm going to immediately calculate that and say, oh, wow, that's very impressive, right? Totally agree with your point.
So my most successful ad of 2025 was the bench press one. The one that I don't think I turned this into an ad, but the one that got the most messages was the overhead press. I think I was overhead pressing 185 for reps or something like that. And that got a lot of messages. So what's really interesting is so those posts in 2025 and now in 2026 were so successful. I used to brag about how I had more women in my community than the average of women as financial advisors. So the percentage of women as financial advisors, I think it was like 28%, 30%. I don't remember how many are CFPs, but I had a lot more than that. And I bragged about that all the time. Lots of women in the inner circle, lots of women. But I can't anymore because those ads and those posts were so successful that they attracted so many men that the percentage is now skewed to where I have significantly fewer women as a percentage than I used to compared to the percentage of women as a whole in the financial advice industry. But I'm not complaining, but you just have
Yeah,
to evolve with that sort of thing.
it's interesting that because it goes back to what you said, the fact that more men actually respond to it. And to me, that's at one level, you think, oh, physical fitness, the opposite sex might attract, might respond to it more. Maybe if the roles were reversed, that would be the case. But women don't necessarily go to the gym to lift en masse. And so they don't really understand or appreciate the numbers.
No.
Whereas a man's going to see that and be like, oh, this guy
Yeah.
lifts. This guy's this.
No woman cares.
Yeah.
Literally no woman. I've never had a woman imply anything more than just straight up business, but I've had men ask about other things. And I'm just like, look, that is not my cup of tea, my friend. So keep it moving.
Disclosure, great example about photos lifting. I guess the pushback I might imagine an advisor or someone just generally give is that I'm a private person. I think you're a private
Oh
person. I,
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it
you're
was
an
tough for
extremely
me.
private person, and you even mentioned when you're talking about it that you resisted it a little bit, but at the end of the day, you saw that it worked, so you're willing to do it. So if you're advising an advisor about doing something and they had that common concern, is I don't want to put myself out there that way or in any way, what would your advice be to them?
This actually happens quite frequently, more than you would imagine. It happens with email marketing because financial advisors are afraid to email daily. But in any context like this, I would say start with books and movies. Start with the books that you're reading, start with the movies that you're watching. Now, if they're super specific, like I'm reading a book called The Noonday Devil about acedia, that is a book that nobody is reading. Nobody is going to relate to that. But if I say, I'm rereading Harry Potter because I watched the Christmas in July Harry Potter movies, I want to see how different they are from the books, that's going to get attention because it's just a popular book. When I talk about Intelligent Investor, books by Peter Lynch, Warren Buffett's letters, I talk about all these personal finance books. If I clown a little bit on Rich Dad, Poor Dad, financial advisors will respond. Millionaire Next Door is another great one, another awesome go-to. These are all books that financial advisors have read. So they're hits with financial advisors. Moneyball is a movie that I'm not the biggest fan of movies in general. I like to read a lot more. But when I talk about Moneyball, that gets a lot of engagement and feedback. People love that movie. Financial advisors do. Wolf of Wall Street is another thing that they love and hate at the same time for obvious reasons. So there are certain books and movies that you can talk about, though you're not disclosing about yourself other than the fact that you're watching them or reading those books. Music is another good one, although it's not as effective. I guess it could be depending on your market, but books and movies for sure are the ones people connect over. One of my most successful emails of all time was about Braveheart. I don't remember all of the specifics, but people loved Braveheart and responded to that, and that did pretty darn well. A financial advisor that I helped, this is a long time ago, he served nurses. That was his niche market. One of his most successful emails of all time was about Grey's Anatomy. And it was specifically about the mistakes that he noticed nurses making in Grey's Anatomy. You don't put an IV in that way. The first step is not this, it's actually this. You don't help patients this way. I'm not a nurse. But that email did well because nurses responded to it saying, you're absolutely right. They don't do that. I love Grey's Anatomy, but I can't stand when they do it. So he tapped into that vein, that market desire or rapport building technique that he used. That was amazing. So that's the advice that I give. And that's boring. It's not as sexy as doing stuff about yourself and your life. And it probably won't work as well, just being transparent with you, but it is a good starting point.
I heard you talking to someone in another podcast, and the topic was delegation and outsourcing. And so, in what we're talking about, it takes you being intentional, it takes disclosure, it takes creating that human content that people respond to versus the mass produced generic cookie cutter content. Increasingly, the term is AI slop. And at the same time, I think the advisor, when they're thinking about this, they're thinking, look, I'm not a marketer, I'm a numbers guy. I do what I do. I want to hire the marketer to do their thing. I want to be the CEO, the advisor. I get it, right? And at the same time, that can work, but there's a disconnect. I'll bring up an example. I'm personally a fan of Elon Musk. Love him or hate him, the guy has a megaphone. And if he has a thought or an idea, he's going to let everyone in the world know about it, and it's going to move the news cycle. As a result, he's the world's first trillionaire, or at least he was. I think
Yes.
he's back down to being a billionaire, but that's a different conversation. The core question, though, is that for that advisor or that CEO, founder, advisor who doesn't see themselves as the marketer, doesn't want to spend the time. They simply want to do what their superpower is, what they're great at, and they want to hire the who to be able to do their marketing for them. How do you integrate those two things in a way that's effective?
I would first acknowledge that, of course, they're not marketers because they're financial advisors. So no financial advisor is a marketer because it's just legitimately not their job. It's not what they do. I don't want them to be marketers because a lot of the traditional marketing advice actually backfires for financial advisors. It's incredibly dangerous. As there's a lot of nuance when you are in a regulated industry. Now, I don't want to give ammunition to financial advisors who believe, oh, compliance is going to limit me. I don't want to do that. But it's just Fact of the matter is, when you go to Amazon and you read best-selling marketing books, a lot of the advice simply does not apply to you because it is made for industries with short sales cycles with low trust. You are in the opposite. You have a long sales cycle with extremely high trust required in order to close the deal, right? That is what you have to do. So following the marketing advice is very dangerous. What I would say is if it were that easy, everyone would do it. I don't think I've ever read a biography, J.D. Rockefeller, Bill Gates, Snowball about Warren Buffett. I don't think I've ever read a section where they said they filed an LLC and then just hired someone to do marketing and that was it. It just doesn't exist. It's not a reality. Another example that I've seen with some of my Christian entrepreneur and business friends is they want to wait to have children until they're super successful. It's not reality. If you go to the Forbes 400 and start looking and see when these people had children, you realize they had children long before they were super successful. They had families. They didn't build businesses and then have families. So it's just you're operating in the wrong reality or you have faulty information. It's just legitimately not true. So I know that financial advisors who think that outsourcing everything is the way to go don't get positive outcomes most of the time. I know that, but they believe it makes sense. To them, if I have a leak in the ceiling and I see water coming down and hitting my desk, I don't know enough about plumbing to safely repair the situation. Of course, I'm going to outsource it. It makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't you do that with marketing? But I'm just telling you, in a long sales cycle with high trust, where the person buying you, the financial advisor, and engaging in a relationship business, it just truly is different. You can outsource it, but I would say if you are going to outsource it, only hand over proven systems. Do not outsource creation because that's gambling. If you have LinkedIn posts, if you have 1,000 LinkedIn posts that are all formulaic and you've got it dialed in and you know that this is what generates business, then you can get an assistant and say, please follow what I have done because you have a proven track record in doing it. Same thing with email. You can get somebody to write your emails. You can outsource it because you have a proven system. Financial advisors will think to themselves, okay, why can't I just hire someone who has a proven system? We'll go back to what we just talked about, the disclosure and the rapport and the trust and all the other stuff. They're not building trust. Your client's not building trust with me. That's not how this works. I have to give you the tools to equip you so you are better in the discovery meeting. So you are better in prospecting and messaging and all of the other things that you are doing in your business because all of it stems from you anyway. I'm still not the biggest fan of outsourcing in general. But if you're going to outsource, I have lived this the hard way. Outsource in your personal life first. Do not outsource in business. If you are still cooking your own meals, washing your own car, cutting your own lawn, doing your own laundry, and if you're still doing all of this stuff, you should probably get rid of that first because some of the highest leverage time you're ever going to have is time that you spend doing the things that are your superpowers. So I would do that and I would increase or create as much margin as possible from personal to business. And then once you have created those proven systems I've talked about, then you can you can hand it to someone else. It's not like you're outsourcing the creativity and the building and all of those things. You're outsourcing the maintenance, the running of the thing. That's how I would approach it. I outsource all sorts of stuff in my personal life. My superpowers are creating and talking with advisors and reading and researching and doing that. The more I do that, the more money I make. And it's not a coincidence. I see that a lot in direct mail, honestly, with financial advisors will get this idea that all they need to do is send 1,000 pieces of direct mail. And if they get in a certain response rate, they're going to get these clients and they try to figure it out that way. Let's say that a financial advisor is experienced, has a ton of money, knows his margins, knows everything about his business. If he sends mass market mailers that are interchangeable, he might be okay because he has the systems and processes and his follow-up speed is super fast and he's efficient. So he can pick up the slack on the back end. He's going to make a lot of money. He knows his average client value. But if you're a new financial advisor and you don't have all of that, you don't have a lot of experience, and you try to do the exact same thing, it's probably not going to work as well because you don't have all the back end stuff. What you would be better off doing as a new financial advisor is legitimately writing in the margins with a real pen saying, Mr. Smith, I'm writing to you specifically, or I'm sending this to you specifically because I think I can help you. Where you are making it clear to Mr. Smith beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are personally reaching out to him and only him. And you will get way better conversions than anyone else who is sending a mass mailing. The problem is that takes time. That's not something that can be outsourced because nobody else can really know every single time why you're reaching out to a specific person. And if you're saying, okay, I'm reaching out to Mr. Smith because of X, you might as well just write it yourself at that point because the time spent creating the outsourcing, you could have just done it. So it's fruitless in that regard. But you taking the time to just actually do it will get you the better marketing results. Eventually you can get to a point where you can just send out a whole bunch. I just did that yesterday. I spent $1,700 on a direct mail campaign. It's one page, which I rarely recommend to financial advisors, but in this specific instance, I knew that I could pull it off because of certain variables, but I knew that one page would get the job done for me in this case. But those are just two examples of things that are nuanced that you need to know who the person is, who they're serving, what their business goals are in order to actually make it work. And some of my most successful campaigns that I have sent to financial advisors went like this. I was on your website and literally give them the real website. I noticed that your homepage had this headline, literally give them the exact headline. I saw that this headline would probably work better. In fact, I have a whole bunch of other marketing ideas that can help you, so on and so forth. There is no doubt in the recipient's mind that I am writing specifically for that person because it's his headline. It's his website, his real headline. I am writing that specifically to him. That is going to get a higher conversion rate than anything else. So that is the nuance. That's the effort, right? People want to be able to send direct mail, a couple of clicks, outsource it, boom, you're done. That's what they want. But that's only a small part of it. That has to be earned. If you really want to jack up your conversion rates, which again, we go back to people exposed to your message and then your conversion rates. If you really want to jack up your conversion rates, that is the way to do it. That's the nuance. I don't know every single niche in the world. So if a financial advisor is serving federal employees and they're writing to a specific group of people in Washington, D.C., I have no idea what to say in that copy. And neither does any other marketing guru on the planet. Only the financial advisor knows. But I can say, this is the framework. I just gave you the framework. You apply that, but you have to be the one to do that.
What are your high level thoughts on AI as it applies to first your own business and then by extension, advisors?
Love AI when used judiciously. I use AI frequently with mailing lists, like the one I sent yesterday, the $1,700 one. So in order to mail using the service that I use, they want you to mail it a certain way in a certain template. And I didn't want to fix it. I'm just so lazy in that regard. I gave it to Claude. I said, hey, can you format this the exact way that they want it formatted? And it was done in a couple of seconds. So that's an amazing tool. I love it. I got my blood work done and tried to make the data anonymous, but how anonymous is it really when it's going to be online anyway? Uploaded it, said, hey, can you, based on a holistic view of my biomarkers, what recommendations would you have for in terms of supplementation and lifestyle and things like that? It's amazing for that. If I do research, for example, if I have 100 pages of research and I want to say, can you give me the biggest takeaways from these specific research papers and cite exactly where I can read it for myself, just to fact check you? It's amazing for that. I love that. But here are some things that give me pause. I was at a sushi restaurant. I like sushi. I am also conscious of what I eat. I'm still kind of fat, but I'm conscious of what I eat. So I take a picture of the menu and I upload it to an AI tool and I say, I would like you to find the rolls that you believe have the highest protein to calorie ratio. And it just makes up rolls, completely makes them up, like new names and everything. Here's what really scared the you know what out of me. I like to do Bible study. I'm on day 1,399 in a row of Bible study. Tomorrow will be the big 1400. I originally used ChatGPT as a Bible study partner. I would ask questions like, what did Paul mean by this? Or in Psalm 91, what is the noonday devil? What does that mean? Where did the origin of the word noonday devil come from? Then I noticed, and this is so chilling, it would make up verses. So I would have the English Standard Version in front of me. I have access to all the other ones online. It would just make them up. Now, originally, I thought it was because of copyright issues, because I know certain Bible translations are copyrighted and you can't really just use them willy nilly. Copyright issues. It was still just making stuff up. It was putting stuff in there that just legitimately was nowhere near it. So it would say, for example, John 3:10 says this, and it just doesn't. It's not there. It doesn't say that. And I look in multiple translations, it's not even a semblance of that. And that really scared me because I started wondering, there are human beings out there who are trusting these services with their personal finance and advice, or me with health. Now, fortunately, I verify it with research papers and things like that. There's ways to get around it. But there are so many people who will just say, okay, it told me to invest in these funds. It told me to have this asset allocation. I'm going to do that. Or financial advisors, it told me to do this marketing strategy. I'm going to do that. But think about how jarring it is to have an objective text that has been around for thousands of years that you have in front of you with your own eyes that you can see, and you ask AI about it and it just makes stuff up. I think that was the red pill moment for me where I was like, screw this. There's just no way that I'm going to be a zealot for AI. I still like it. I still enjoy it. I still think it's an okay tool. But I think for creation and knowledge and information about topics that you don't know about, tread very carefully. Because if it makes up sushi rolls and makes up Bible verses that can easily be verified, who knows what it's doing for marketing and health and psychology and wellness and relationships. I've read news reports of people with depression trying to use it as I goodness gracious, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. And for financial advice, for marketing advice, for business consulting, I'm not saying not to do it because I guess if you're desperate and you just need something, sure. I had a stomach pain a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not the WebMD kind of guy, but I started describing my symptoms and it said it could be this or this. That was helpful, but it still didn't get me across the finish line. I knew what it could possibly be, but obviously I didn't depend on it for a diagnosis. I do think people should treat it like that, but just understand if it's making up those verses, who knows what it's making up when you're asking. And you just don't know. You have no way of knowing. If you don't know the topic, if it's not your domain expertise, as you put it, you just have no clue. You just don't know. And I think that's a very dangerous place to be.
I generally agree with what you said. And at the same time, we've been using it long enough and we have enough reps and experience to know where the limitations are. And so what you just pointed out is clearly one of those things that people need to be careful of. I find for the expert domain area expertise that it's an incredible tool because you can get access to things. You can sharpen your own thinking because you're just not blindly accepting it. I argue with it all the time. It'll come back and it'll give me some piece of advice. And then as soon as I give it one more piece of context, it always says, that changes everything. If you didn't know that extra piece of context and you were just assuming that it had the right answer, that's not good. And at the same time, what I also believe, and we talked about this briefly about Tesla and how my car, and I guess your car as well, now drives me around. I stopped driving. I can no longer drive for the most part. And I see that as a good thing. I believe the stats where the full self-driving is 800% safer than the human driving. And I can totally understand why that's true. And if you haven't experienced it, go to a Tesla dealer, ask to do a test drive, and you'll see very quickly what AI is capable of. And so, for all the limitations that are real today, my question is always, what about tomorrow? What about next year? Because we've seen this rapid curve, right? So, some of those things that are just silly where it makes stuff up and it gives you obviously ridiculous answers over time is going to happen less and less. And so, what's the best way positioning for someone to not blindly trust it, but also to benefit from it and I would say calibrate to it today in a way that's going to benefit them both now and long term.
I would think in terms of picks and shovels. ChatGPT ads right now are not that great. You need to be the advertiser. You need to be there. You need to get in the AI answers. You need to look at your systems. Also, think about it this way. What industries and sectors are going to benefit the most from AI? Don't even think about your business at this point. Because truthfully, if you're in business, I believe that your business should generate personal wealth for you. I think that's one of the things that separates me from a lot of the marketing people in the financial advice space. I don't care about your business necessarily at the end of the day. I want personal wealth for you. People will say, oh, we're going to need more grid infrastructure, so we should invest in utility companies and utility stocks. A lot of that stuff is priced in. What about the materials that are used? Copper. Copper has had a tremendous run. Let's start thinking outside of the box of industries and sectors that are going to benefit from AI. What if the biotech industry experiences a tremendous boom because AI can do medical research on drugs and potential cures and prevention faster than ever before, faster than any laboratory that has ever existed? That would be pretty cool to be an investor in biotech companies and benefit from that. Who cares if you made $100,000 from your business or $100,000 from your personal investments? If the money is fungible and it makes no difference to you either way, it's the same thing. I would think in terms of that. I do wonder what my children's adult lives will be when they are 40, 50, 60 years old. Somebody born in 1900 saw the rise of planes and automobiles becoming far more
Yep.
popular, indoor plumbing, electricity indoors, someone landing on the moon multiple times, multiple moon missions, the internet, the ability to FaceTime someone. All of this stuff was unheard of in 1900 when someone was born. To have a child when cars and planes didn't exist, to have a child that can FaceTime someone from New York to LA is incredible. That's just one generation. That's your child. So I wonder what will happen there. From the stuff I have seen, there are going to be very good things for AI, but also very bad things. As a marketer, you think in terms of propaganda, you think in terms of manipulating human desires. These are the ways that marketing can be used for evil. I don't endorse this. I don't believe that it is a good thing, but I understand that in a world where people operate in terms of scarcity and competition and an arms race, it's people are going to do that and they're going to manipulate people. I don't want to talk about what that could look like on the show, but it does worry me. I am looking forward to robots. I got on the wait list for the robot, the Neo robot that is going to do your laundry and cook and clean and do that. I want that. I would rather do that. If somebody gave me an autonomous robot that I could have in this house right now, I would sign up in a heartbeat. I would love that. But I don't know, again, going back to the red pill moment for me, where I don't know if I would use it for knowledge right yet. As it gets better, and if there's a way for me to verify, to trust but verify, absolutely. I would love to embrace that future. But I'm thinking in terms of what industries are going to boom because of AI. Everybody's just focused on chips and computers and quantum and the race, the march towards progress and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, what industries are going to make the most money from using AI? Obviously, not financial advice. Biotech is just one example. But I think that's a great benefit to humanity if a biotech company could run research faster than it ever has ever before and conduct trials and analyze data and spot patterns and then make a drug faster than its competitors. That's wonderful for capitalism. I want to be a participant in that.
Final question for someone that's listening to this that's not already on your email list or anywhere else where they can find you. What is the best way for people to enter your world?
I would go to theadvisorcoach.com and you can choose your own adventure. If you want to join the email list, you can. If you want to listen to the podcast, you can. If you want to check out the products, you can. You can do whatever you want. It's set up that way and it's set up intentionally because it works well. So theadvisorcoach.com. If for some reason you can't find it, you go to Google and type in James Pollard, the advisor coach, and I should be there. Just you enter my world the way that best serves you, the financial advisor.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.